Hey there, and welcome to Kessler Makes Stuff. Today I'll be going over how I 3D modeled and put together the Mech for my Babu Frik Animatronic that I'm working on. So this mech uses 6 microservers, M2 push and thread rods, M2 tie rod ends, and connector linkage stoppers. I'm using Elegoo Rapid PLA Plus, and I'll link all of this in the description below. So I'm pretty new to Blender, but I learned a lot while I was doing this. So what I'm doing here is making the lids for the eye mechanism. And this was my first iteration, so here I'm making the hinges that will hinge on the arms that I put on the faceplate that you'll see later. So I want to show the two different designs that I came up with. The first one had the circle or hinge a little bit lower than the lid, and this did not make for good 3D printing. So I wasn't able to actually put the lid on the bed, so it made this rough lid, and I had to sand it, and it wasn't working very well. So what I did is move that circle up, and so that I could put the lid on the print bed so that it would make a nice straight line. So I didn't have to do any sanding. All I have to really do is kind of round off the edge if I wanted to, but that made it look a lot better. And so what you're seeing here is the eyeball that I already 3D modeled. I went ahead and made this eye look a lot like Babu Frik's eye. And what I'm doing here is making a few hinges so that these push rods can sit within these hinges. And so the middle one will be the left and right of the eye movement, and then there will be a top one that will be the up and down movement of the eye. So here are my two designs that I did. The first design had bigger circles, and this was because I had a much larger push rod. So this was kind of clunky, it was really heavy, and I wanted to make it so that I could have a smaller push rod and I could put a little bit more components into the eye than having this big chunky push rod inside of there. And the other thing is I had to squish the whole thing with a set of pliers that marred up the side of the eyeball just to get those push rods in, and I didn't like that. So I changed the design and I made it so that you could take a push rod and snap it into each one of these circles, and it was a much better design. As you can see here, it's a bit clunky to have that big push rod in there. I was having to use really big brass tubing, So I went ahead and 3D modeled a better version that uses the smaller push rods within the eyeball. So what I'm doing here is making a model of how wide that push rod is, and then I'll be making the mechanism that goes onto the rod. So you'll see that it's going to go the entire width of the eye so that the rod can't move back and forth. And the circle is what the tie rod end will connect to, and then there will be a square that the brass tubing will connect to. And that tie rod on that circle will be moving the eye left and right, so looking left and right. And this was my first iteration. I kept iterating on this because I needed to make it nice and thick. Because the push rod seemed to not fit very well in the smaller version that I had. So here's the finished version. This is actually the thicker version that I made. It allowed for the push rod to be in there. The thinner version, the push rod was actually breaking it because it was too thick for what I had made. As you can see here, it was kind of a mess. The square in the middle wasn't big enough to really hold on to the brass tubing, so I went ahead and just made it a more chunky piece. And what you're seeing here is the faceplate that I made. I unfortunately didn't record me doing the 3D model, but this was the kind of final version that I came up with. And so what you'll see here is all of the servos fitting within the faceplate. And one thing that I realized after I printed this is that the two center servos, those holes were way too big. So I've gone ahead and went back into the model and fixed that, and I'll be printing a new version where the servos will fit a lot better. And I also made some relief for the power cables to go through because I was really pinching them when I was trying to put them into the faceplate. And you'll also see these protrusions here that holds the eyelids in place. And the whole thing is really sturdy, which I really love. Because I originally wanted to do a steel plate, but I went ahead and did this 3D modeled plate, and it worked just fine. And here I'm assembling this inner linkage here. So I'm screwing on the brass plate that will fit to the faceplate. And this thing was pretty tedious to put together, to be honest. So you'll see me kind of trying to get these screws into place. And I think what I'm going to do next is probably 3D model a better way to have the linkage between the eye and the faceplate instead of doing this brass tubing. It just didn't seem to work very well. And here I'm putting the linkage for the up and down movement of the eye, and that snaps right into place. So I previously made one side of the mechanism working just to make sure that I could make it work, and so I'm just kind of copying what I did on the left side of the mech. And one thing that I really needed to remember is that it's kind of mirrored. So the mechanism on the right side had to be mirrored And I had to do that in my code and everything to make sure everything was mirrored with the left side. So one thing that I found is that the M2 push rods that I have don't really fit perfectly into the tie rod ends, so I ended up having to glue them in place, which seemed to be fine, and it worked just fine. And so what I really want to change for the next iteration of this is screwing in that middle stock, because it just was so hard to put in there, and I think the tubing that I got is just a tad small for how big I made the faceplate. So I think I'm just going to 3D model something that can just attach straight to the faceplate. And one thing I noticed with these connectors here, these stoppers, is the Allen wrench that came with them were not very good at screwing these in. So I took my own Allen wrench that I had, and it worked a lot better. So if you get these from Amazon, the link that I sent, there's better Allen keys that you can get that actually screw these in a lot better. And one thing that I kind of screwed up here is that I should have measured, and this is the first iteration, so I've since made new lids for the right side of the mech, but I should have measured how far off I had them, because the ones on the left were pretty much in the perfect place, and on the right, I made them a little too high on the lid. So the next iteration I did, I measured the whole thing and made sure that it was perfect. And another thing I wasn't very happy about was having to bend this push rod. I'm still kind of thinking about how I can do this lid better, but that's what I have for now. I haven't really done anything else to make that change. And I also kind of had to make this funky thing here where the tie rod ends are put on with this push rod that I bent into place. I need to figure out a better way to put those together, because it's just kind of odd the way I put it together, and I don't really like it that much. So I'll probably iterate on that at some point as well. So here's the mech working, and it's working for the most part, but there's a lot of tweaks I want to make to it, and I want to make sure that it works flawlessly. So I'll be posting a video next week of the whole mech working as I want it to be working. Thanks for watching all the way to the end, and I will see y'all next time.